who literally risked their lives to protect our democracy. We don't feel much support most days. Let's not make today most days. Please, we need your support to be able to protect you from men like these who carried out this tragic, tragic event. Pray for these families. I spoke with the families of the deceased and the injured. They are not having a good time trying to deal, absorb this, trying to understand why. And they need your prayers. So please join us in helping us comfort the grieving officers' families. And I trust that soon, because we're working very diligently in processing the crime scene, to find evidence to bring any other suspects to justice that were a part of this. But please pray for our strength through this trying time. Thank you.
That is Dallas Police Chief David Brown speaking just a short while ago this morning at a news conference in his city. 5 police officers dead, more injured, wounded in a shooting last night by some cowardly snipers who targeted them at a Black Lives Rally event where the police officers were simply trying to protect the participants. In fact, one black man interviewed says that a police officer pulled him out of the line of fire and saved his life. Believes he saved his life anyway, and it ought to tell us something. It should also, I had a thought this morning. What if every law enforcer in America, and we're talking even your campus police, your transit police, your metro police, your local police, your county sheriff's department, your state police, what if they all decided to take a day off all at once? What if there was nobody on the streets for 24 hours in this country? I know it's a movie theme, but let's just say it really happened. Would it finally put the fear of God into the Democrats who encouraged this sort of thing to happen last night? And I'll get to my rationale on that in just a moment and tell you why I believe the creep in chief played a role in this shooting. And that's on the way in just a moment. But I have to tell you, I have never seen anything quite so despicable in my life as some of the comments that are Cal Thomas made a great point this morning. The syndicated newspaper columnist. He's the most widely read newspaper columnist in America. And he had a post at Facebook this morning where he said, well, the one fellow who they blew up last night, he was talking with police beforehand and said he was out to kill white people, specifically white police officers. So then the question becomes, according to Thomas, isn't this a hate crime by the definition that liberals throw out about hate crimes? 10 minutes now after 8 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310. KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We'll be joined in studio shortly by some local law enforcers. We're going to talk about this morning and where they stand on it. Why would anybody want to be in law enforcement anymore? And I know that a lot of people out there ask that question. They'll tell us why they still do it, because obviously they're under a lot of stress and duress right now. Here's the thing. This supposedly is related. We don't know for sure, but it supposedly is related to the shootings of 2 black men that occurred in places nowhere near Dallas, Texas. One of those being in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The other happening in Minnesota. Now, in Louisiana, the claim in Louisiana is they pulled this guy over or they picked him off the street and he had been accused of a crime by some telephone caller. And the argument is, well, you can't go on some telephone caller's word. Well, look, if somebody calls your local police department and says there's a suspicious guy lurking on my street, police will check it out. I heard a witness to all of this say last night, who witnessed the shooting in Baton Rouge, too, that the fellow that the police were taking down had an item in one of his hands, and it was dark, and it did look like it could be a handgun, a pistol, if you will. If that be the case, they didn't know what they were dealing with. Number 2, this notion that, well, you just can't stop people on the street. Yes, you can. It's called broken glass policing. It's been pioneered in a couple of 2 U.S. major cities. One, Baltimore, Maryland, by the then mayor of that city. His name was Martin O'Malley. You may remember he briefly ran for president. He is a flaming liberal Democrat. It was also used exclusively for a time in New York City under the mayoral dictatorship of the guy who wouldn't allow people to drink 32-ounce soda bottles. That was the mayor, Michael Bloomberg. But his police commissioner, Ray Kelly, was advised to run broken glass policing in New York. Ray Kelly, I know Ray Kelly, his son Greg. When Greg got out of the Marine Corps, I gave Greg his very first TV job, so I know the family. If you didn't know it, they're Democrats. Broken glass policing is simply going into a neighborhood and profiling, seeing a group of young men standing on a street corner. So you stop them and you frisk them. And if they have dope on them, you take the dope and you charge them. If they have firearms on them that are illegal, you charge them for that. You get them off the streets. And what happened in both Baltimore and New York is, despite the fact that this may not be constitutional according to some people, but the crime rates went way down. And again, it was pioneered by liberal Democrats. So when you hear all of this talk that police are out there just roughing people up, they were ordered to do it by liberal Democrats. And then you've got people like the governor of Minnesota. I came across this morning at theresurgent.com, and it's a comment from the governor of Minnesota about the shooting of the fellow in Minnesota who was sitting in his car, and his girlfriend says he told the officer who pulled him over for a broken taillight that he was licensed to carry and that he was carrying, because you're supposed to do that, right? It's a courtesy, and that he was then shot. This is the governor's comment. Would this have happened if those passengers, the driver and the passengers, were white? I don't think it would have. I think all of us in Minnesota are forced to confront that this kind of racism exists. Look, what do we know from Minnesota? You have half a video of this encounter. You have the aftermath. You have the aftermath where the woman is sitting there saying, this is my boyfriend. She's not screaming, by the way. The only person who's distraught in that video that she's taking after the shooting is the police officer, who apparently thought the guy was reaching for the firearm. But the girlfriend is sitting there and she's saying, well, this is my boyfriend, and he's sitting here bleeding right now, and he's the father of our illegitimate child in the back seat. And as you can see, he's quite bloody now, and he may die because of all of this. He had told the police officer, what's he supposed to do? He was reaching for his wallet. So you're getting half the story. And gosh, she was strangely calm during all of that. I find that to be a little bit questionable too as well. It's not just the governor of Minnesota throwing kerosene on all of this. The creep in chief also had an opportunity. He threw a little more kerosene on it as well while he was in Warsaw, Poland. I was in my kitchen last night getting my dinner together, and I was looking through the little opening there that goes into my living room and watching all of this transpire on TV.
All of us as Americans should be troubled by these shootings, because these are not isolated incidents. They're symptomatic of a broader set of racial disparities that exist in our criminal justice system. And I just want to give people a few statistics to try to put in context why emotions are so raw around these issues. According to various studies, not just one, but a wide range of studies that have been carried out over a number of years, African Americans are 30% more likely than whites to be pulled over. After being pulled over, African Americans and Hispanics are 3 times more likely to be searched. Last year, African Americans were shot by police at more than twice the rate of whites. African Americans are arrested at twice the rate of whites. African American defendants are 75% more likely to be charged with offenses carrying mandatory minimums. They receive sentences that are almost 10% longer than comparable whites arrested for the same crime. So that if you add it all up, the African American and Hispanic population, who make up only 30% of the general population, make up more than half of the incarcerated population.
Yes, the oppressed victims. And by the way, he doesn't mention that the reason they're arrested in such greater numbers is because they commit crimes in such greater numbers. We're not saying that these people are disposed to do this, but they live in areas, especially urbanized areas, where often the allure of the bling and the drug dealing is so strong they get sucked into it. Nobody twists their arm and says, go do this. But if you're 8% of the population and you're committing 52% of the crimes, then you should be arrested more often than the overall population. He doesn't tell you that part of that, does he? So I guess his permission is now, or he's giving permission, to go out and deal dope and shoot more cops.
Now, these are facts. And when incidents like this occur, there's a big chunk of our fellow citizenry that feels as if, because of the color of their skin, they are not being treated the same. And that hurts.
Well, then don't deal dope. 817, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Don't break into somebody's house. There are so many different rules here that the rest of us try and follow. We have a caller with us. You're on the air at 817 on News Radio 1310, KLIX.
Yeah, good morning, Bill. Thanks for taking my call. There you go, throwing some more gas on the fire. Who's the person or persons that killed those cops down there, and my prayers go out to all of them and the wounded. And in our local police, thank you guys for what you do. I don't know why you do it. I'd quit. I'd say screw it. You guys take care of yourselves. Enough's enough. But anyway, I'll be willing to bet you the people or the person that pulled the triggers had the ultimate gun control on them. They're probably felons. They weren't supposed to have the guns anyway.
Right.
And how did they buy the guns? They probably had to have bought them illegally. So it goes back to like that lady in England who was that lawmaker. She was shot and stabbed here a few weeks ago. They have the ultimate gun control. There's no guns. Nobody has guns. Obama thinks we're all going to float around here and tiptoe through the tulips when they take the guns away, because that means nobody will have them except the military and the police. This guy is an absolute joke. And people say, well, you shouldn't talk about the president that way. He is an absolute fiasco. He can't say something nice to the families. He can't say something nice about the community. He has to go to a guy like me in Jerome, Idaho, that has lots and lots of guns, and all I do is maybe shoot some coyotes and stuff. But that's what he's talking about. He's talking about people like us that have never been in jail, never been in handcuffs. But he like you just said, he won't tell you the true numbers.
I got to run for a break, but I thank you for the call. You're spot on. He wants to blame people who actually own firearms in this country. And we'll get to that in the next segment of the program and more of your telephone calls as well. But it just shows you the mindset. This is just another excuse to try and disarm you. Look, if he says the police are so bad, then why does he want to take your self-defense away? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Well, he's got his own brown shirts out there who could easily take over the country afterwards. Bill Colley with you. Remember, we're on the cusp of riots in these big cities because of this. And then the next step from rioting is called civil war. I don't know that it's anything we want. It's 71. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. More on this subject just ahead.